The base has dropped on a live Soccer Down Here show from Wild Leap Atlanta. Season number 7 for Atlanta United kicking off on Saturday. My name's Jason Longshore, joined by John Nelson.
Good to be here. And it's great. Does it feel like season 7?
No, it feels like yesterday pulling into a parking deck trying to figure out how to get across campus at Georgia Tech to figure out how to do what we've ended up doing. An MLS team that has become a standard bearer for the league. 2023 starts with the San Jose Earthquakes on Saturday. Who all's going to the game, by the way?
There you go.
Who all is tailgating very early on Saturday? That's what I am talking about.
There you go.
I don't think our guest is going to be tailgating very early. It is a very busy day for new Atlanta United president and CEO Garth Lagerwey, who's spending some time with us. Garth, come join us. Thank you so much for taking some time. I don't know how we got this time with you this week.
Yeah, really?
It's got to be nuts for you right
It's
now.
my third one today. But we're having fun. I mean, like, you don't get to spend this much time with fans all the time. So this is really – thank you all for welcoming me, and everyone's been so nice. And I hope to meet all of you guys. So thanks for supporting the team.
How are you liking Atlanta so far?
It's been amazing. I went to school in the South, 30 years ago or whatever, and so I had some idea of Southern hospitality, but it's been amazing. It's been sincere. It's been real. I mean, people just walking up to me on the street and saying, welcome. And I don't know that I expected that. I certainly don't deserve it. But it's been really fun. It's felt like a really good fit.
Now, we've got a bunch of questions for you. The people who registered and came out sent questions ahead of time. We've got some questions of our own, too.
I hope so, right?
Yeah.
You guys do this for a living.
We do. And I want to start with something. You spoke to the media yesterday. And
yes.
Me being an Atlanta guy.
You had the coolest microphone, by the way. Did the guys know how cool? Like, you had the little wrap and the fuzzy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you had the coolest gear.
I do what I can, I try my best. But
can we hear this one better?
There you go.
All right.
What stuck with me yesterday that you said, and me being the Atlanta guy, this is what grabbed me. You want Atlanta to be the hub for soccer in this continent. With 2026 coming, what are all the things that go into that?
Look, I think that a lot. Well, so let me just to break it down. We obviously have this opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity with the World Cup coming here, right? I think Atlanta's in a position they could host up to half a dozen games potentially as part of the World Cup. So, like on paper, everyone knows about that, right?
Yep.
But if you walk back from 2026, 2025 is the first year that there's going to have an expanded Club World Cup. So, if anybody followed the Sounders. They just played. They lost to Al Ahly 1-0, but it was the first MLS team to play in the Club World Cup. That's an aspiration that we're going to have here with Atlanta United. You got to win the Champions League to get to the Club World Cup, but that tournament we could then host at Mercedes-Benz in 2025. So you want to talk about a cool goal to have? Can we win the Champions League by 24 to qualify for the Club World Cup in 25? Back up a year before that, Copa America is coming here in 2024. Can Atlanta host that, right? U.S. Soccer apparently is looking around for where they want to be long term. So could Atlanta host them? So we got the airport, which from an international soccer perspective in particular is the absolute crown jewel. Think about where soccer players come from. And I don't mean like where they were born, but like where do they work? If you're talking about the men's and women's national teams, they tend to work in Europe or in MLS, right? So what's in the middle of that? Atlanta. So what's got a better climate than Chicago? I speak as a Chicago native. Atlanta. So I think we're really well positioned to become this hub of soccer in North America. And I think that's the aspiration. And that's the opportunity we have, too. I want to dream big here a little bit and not just be satisfied with, well, we won the right to host the World Cup. But no, we got this literally in terms of growing our audience in a city of 6 million people, as diverse as this place is. This is the best opportunity of our lifetimes to try to get people interested and invested in Atlanta United, and that's why I'm here.
Where do you have all of this written down? It sounds like it's like years are laid out on a BlackBerry someplace or on a big whiteboard.
Hey, do you know how much work it was to convince my wife to let me do this? I've been over this script like 100 times. To be clear, the reason I was allowed to go is because my wife's family lives in Tennessee.
There you go.
So But to be clear, the first time I proposed this, she's like, wait, you're going to leave Seattle for the second biggest club in MLS? Why? And I'm like, well, the biggest one's calling, so that's bigger. And anyway, I'm really happy. I'm really flattered that they gave me a chance, and hopefully I make the most of the opportunity.
What were those conversations like? It's like, I'm bringing you closer to home. It's like, yes, I know I'm leaving Seattle. Yes, I know we've done this.
Yes.
But these conversations at the kitchen table in the Lazy Susan, I imagine that they were rather interesting conversations to have. It's like, we've got a chance to be closer to your family and your parents and all of that side.
The phrase my wife used was revisionist history. She claimed that I have already co-opted that and reverse engineered that conversation from, hey, I got this promotion in Atlanta. I'd love to take it to, hey, we're really doing this for you to be with your family. So we have 3 little boys. It is going to be a transition from a family perspective for a little while. So I am married to an awesome woman named Hillary. You guys will probably meet her at some point. But for her patience, I am allowed to continue to kind of persevere. So we're having fun.
It's a perfect follow-up. One of the questions from the crowd is, what was the most attractive factor that led you to come to Atlanta?
Look, selfishly, it's a bigger job. So for the last 15 years, I've been a general manager. So that means I ran the soccer side of the business. I ran half the business. One of the biggest flaws that you identify when you do that is you're not always aligned strategically in terms of what are you using to generate revenue? How are you then taking that revenue, reallocating it? How are you organizing your workforce to execute the goals that you want to do long-term? Because in order to be a successful sports franchise, the game is kind of the tip of the iceberg. Like, that's what you see on the weekend, but all the work that goes into that, all the foundations you build in the community with businesses from a sponsorship perspective, with schools in terms of educating kids and bring them into the academy, all of that stuff happens underneath. And all that stuff requires time and effort and energy, and it has to be strategically planned. So to come as the CEO with a chance to do soccer and business, that was a big job for me. And look, Darren and I are friends. For those who don't know, we played together in 1995 for the Hampton Roads Mariners.
There you go.
I like to say the immortal
Hampton Roads Mariners.
In the USISL.
They were Hampton Roads at that time, not Virginia Beach, because they
that's
flip-flopped
right.
Back and forth.
That's correct. I'm positive that the training ground and the stadium we played in do not exist anymore. I have a couple of claims to fame. I mean, none of the teams that I played for in MLS exist. I played for the Kansas City Wiz.
The Wiz, 96.
Nobody beats the Wiz.
Nobody beats the Wiz. So the Wiz sued the Wiz, and then they had to become the Wizards because they couldn't claim the Wiz. So and then they became Sporting Kansas
And one
City.
of the best names ever, Digital Takawura.
That's right. My teammate. He was a character. I think still might be the only Zimbabwean player in the league history.
I believe so. Yeah.
So then you go to the Snorting Horses, at Dallas Burn. Now FC Dallas. Another one doesn't.
I've got a one-liner that I'm not going to say.
No,
don't do it.
I already know where you're going.
Uh-huh.
It was a Sports Center line, and I think got an anchor in trouble.
It's Oberman said it to Patrick, and it was about me.
I didn't know you were involved in this.
No, I mean, it wasn't personal.
All right, now we got to tell the story.
It wasn't personal to me, but they literally did a clip. I made a save, turned a shot over the bar, and Oberman turned and said, "The Burn versus the Wiz," and I'll let you guys fill in the blanks. But and then just to finish the story, Miami Fusion was the last team I played for in MLS. Also don't exist. So now Inter Miami CF. So I feel like that's a bizarre.
That's not going to happen here, right? We're good.
Atlanta United feels more solid.
I think so.
More,
just checking.
I think so.
MLS 2.0, right?
Please tell me that you have stuff framed from those 3 franchises in your office.
I don't see, but we had one kid, and then we had another kid,
yes,
and then we had a third boy. We always tell the little boy, the 5-year-old, we tell him violence can't always be the answer because it's a little bit rough and tumble. But my wife swears that she will frame a jersey once we are done, once we're through the child raising, rearing period, and she has time to do things like that. But so it's coming. But I have them. They're laying in wait.
Okay, just checking.
All right, next question from the crowd. This is an interesting one. Now that you've been with Atlanta for a little while, what's been the most challenging aspect of maybe where the club is that you have on your list that you'd like to tweak or change or update?
Challenging aspect, I think, has been, look, you had 8 years of really good leadership from Darren Eales and highly respected executive of the year multiple times. And, goes on to the Premier League, and are people going to be open-minded? Are they going to be receptive to a new guy coming in? And it's nice to have your resume and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you got to hopefully persuade rather than dictate. And so, has that been a challenge that we're going to do some things differently? I think our relationship with the media is going to be a little bit different, just in having talked to both of you in a couple other forums now. But I think that what's changing is the franchise is going from a startup trying to make people, hey, come to a game. This is a new thing. People in Atlanta don't know about it, to now how do we make ourselves more corporate, more process-oriented, more predictable, and really build this thing and understand that we have this once-in-a-generation opportunity between now and 2026 that if we don't use, we will regret for the rest of our lives. And so now we have this really systemic way to build the audience, and that's the part that gets me pretty excited.
When it came to Garth Lagerwey executive, how long did it take for you to come up with your style and your approach and how you manage things? How long did it take for you to become Garth Lagerwey executive?
It's funny. So I thought that. So I was 7 years in Salt Lake and then 8 in Seattle, and now I'm here. And I thought that I had kind of developed a way of doing things. It was largely, I worked at a law firm called Latham & Watkins. I was a corporate attorney. I lived the dream, sleeping in my office, working 100-hour weeks. It's very good training. It was the most enjoyable life. But I'll tell a story. So I got approached 2006 on Christmas, or week before, and said, hey, do you want to work on Christmas? And I'm in Washington, D.C. My family's in Chicago. And I said, why would I want to see my mom for such an insignificant holiday? And they said, well, and again, it's Latham & Watkins. It's like a big corporate firm. So they the answer to the question.
Yes. It's rhetorical.
Yes, it's rhetorical. It's exactly right. But if in that circumstance you say yes, their kind of end of the bargain is they're going to give you something kind of cool to work on. So it turned out that our client was buying a piece of the NHL St. Louis Blues. And then, unbeknownst to them or to me at that time, Sports Capital Partners, which company you guys wouldn't remember, at that time they owned RSL and the Blues. So I worked on this deal that I got on because I worked on Christmas, and that gave me the opportunity then to meet Dave Checketts. Dave Checketts at one point was the youngest general manager in NBA history. One of the all-time best sports executives in the United States. And so it wound up, long story short, he hires me to work at Salt Lake about 9 months later. Famously for me says, he hires me, right? I'm on my second day in a job, and he looks at me and he's like, just don't ever pretend you know what you're doing. And I was like, oh my goodness, how have I failed in 2 days? I left my law firm, I got a cushy corporate job, but what he did by saying that, and what his intention was to empower me. And so when you talk about style, I've always tried to empower the people that work for me, because by saying you can ask questions, by saying, allowing me to say, I don't know. And he said, look, I don't know isn't good enough. I don't know, but I'll find out. But he literally said, I want you to call your new peers. I want you to call people in the league office when you don't understand something, you don't know it. That's not a vulnerability. That's not a weakness. That's how you learn. And so I've really tried to take that takeaway and really try to apply it, which is a long walk to say. I get to Seattle. I think I got this style down, within you guys know, I think by this point that the Sounders fans, they can recall the general manager if they don't like you.
Yep.
So what they don't tell you publicly is so that vote is every 4 years. That wound up being fine, because in 4 years you can build a team and stuff. And so it wasn't that stressful. But a year in, the Sounders weren't very good. We wound up having to fire Ziggy Schmidt. But I met with the Alliance Council, and they said, well, we're thinking of recalling you. So outside of the normal 4-year cadence, I wasn't aware of this. They could recall me at any time as well. And I said, look, can you give me a week? Because the summer transfer window was open, and we were able to sign Nico. To be clear, I did not know that at the time, but within a week we were able to sign Nico Ladero. We then went on, won the title that year, and then it kind of worked out from there. But it's just funny how all these things kind of come together when you talk about things like style and how you do things.
So one thing a lot of people have been asking about, I feel like, we've talked about it all week, and we're going to keep talking about it as we get closer to Saturday, just how this roster's come together. And I think people maybe looking at it from the outside wonder, what's your role on the player side, on the soccer side in the organization now?
Yeah, so CEO role, I think, again, running both business and soccer. So I have a head of business named George O'Donoghue, and a head of soccer, and that's Carlos Bocanegra. Carlos works in parallel with Demetrius Estefanahu. I just butchered his last name. He's going to kill me. But those guys, those guys divide the labor in the same way that Chris Henderson and I did. And for those who know the Sounders a little bit, Chris Henderson, now the GM in Inter Miami, sporting director, I think is his former title, but where Carlos is sourcing the players, he's the eye for talent. He's the former player with the Rolodex and all the ability, managing scouting. And Demetrius is able to come in. He's a Harvard-trained lawyer. He worked at the league office for a long time. He was helped when I chaired the CSO committee, the Chief Soccer Officer Committee, for 5 or 6 years, and Demetrius led that from a league side. So Demetrius and I have a pre-existing relationship, and he's the guy that comes in then and helps close the deal. So it's those two guys working together. And look, I'm up above that layer saying, hey, here's the framework. Here's how I want to pursue this. So I want to build around a 10, and I want to have a 9. And some of the things are here, right? So it's not like you got to start from scratch or it's a blue sky exercise, but you figure out what your strengths are. And, what I've been really drilling down on are what are our processes? Because nobody's going to get them right all the time. But if you have a good process and the process is based on analytics, you're going to have objective evidence that informs it, and you can do that same process over and over again, which gives you your best chance to succeed. So it's me coming over from that strategic basis and saying, so it's not being involved in an individual deal, but it's understanding, like, this is the target we're going for. This is how much we're spending. As one very simple example, we want to spend our money in the spine, so in the middle of the team. So if you talk about expected goal models, right, it's how you build any analytics-based team, the guys closest to the goal are the ones that can influence the expected goalkeeper and the center forward. So now, again, are you going to trade Brad Guzan because it's a new – no, that's stupid. Brad Guzan, by the way, the guy that made me the second best goalkeeper ever from Chicago. I held the title as the best one for a while. Now, Skaga Slonina's come in. I'm falling quickly now. But, anyway, just to give you guys kind of an idea how it works.
And I know at the same time, you mentioned the overarching ideas about this city and 26 and 25 and 24 and what you're anticipating, the events coming through. I know a lot of fans are looking at the plan for Atlanta United the same way. It's like, okay, what's the plan this year? How do we have that success? How do we sustain it for the next couple of years? From your side, what's the plan? I know fans are looking. It's like, what is the plan in your mind for the next couple of years for Atlanta United?
Yeah, so if you look at how I did things in my previous stops, I'm very methodical. I think the way I phrased it, Jason, you've been to at least one of those press conferences. I say, I will frustrate you before I make you happy.
Yes.
I am very methodical. We only do deals when they're the right deals to do. You have to have efficient contracts. What you can't do in a salary cap system is overspend on non-mission critical things, because you have multi-year guaranteed contracts, and it's really hard to get out of those sometimes, because the player that does well, you don't want to sell. The player that does poorly, you do want to sell, but the market's aware that they're not playing poorly, so It's harder to sell, right? So what do? We basically came in and we looked at the salary cap situation, and it was not great. And we basically reset. And again, to be fair to the guys who came before, to Darren and Carlos, et cetera, they had so much success out of the gate. I mean, remember, this is 17, 18, 19. They're arguably the best team in the league all 3 years. I still thank them that they missed. I think Joseph missed a penalty kick in 19 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But for that, Seattle doesn't host. And if Seattle doesn't host, we don't win. So, life is funny that way. When you think about that small little chance, does that bring me here somehow because my resume is a little bit better and who knows? But, what I mean to say is just when you talk about how we do it, we got rid of some inefficient contracts, some players that were, in part just at non-premium positions that were highly paid. You get them in places where they're on loan, where hopefully you can recoup some of your investment, and now you start building. And so the other thing is that took time, right? You guys should already be frustrated with me. We did 18 transactions in the offseason, right? And so, and I'm going to ask for a little bit of patience here in the first month, because we signed 3 guys, Yakimakis and Abram and Etienne. Thank you. Thank Carlos and Jonathan Spector and our scouting team and Arjun, our analyst, and those guys did all the work. And Demetrius and getting the deals done. But those guys haven't really played for us yet. That's the reality. So I am hopeful that looking at you right now, I think that there is a call it 30-70 chance, 30 to the good, that we're going to have all three eligible for opening day. So
you're telling me there's a chance?
There's a chance.
Okay, I'll take it.
Saying there's a chance.
Yeah, but those guys, first we got to get them eligible, then they got to actually play, then they have to get used to their team. Like, it's a process, right? So it's going to be, we got an opportunity, though. We got, I think, 3 or 4 at home to start. So hopefully we can get off on the right foot, and then we can integrate those guys. And really, truly, we should get better every week for the first 2 months, because the thing we got going for us is we only play 1 game a week, basically all the way through April.
That's massive.
So it gives us this runway to build up. So that was part of the plan, but obviously in an ideal world, you would have cleared out the contracts ahead of time. We went as fast as we could.
All right, I want to pick your MLS brain here, because this is an interesting one that has come up over the years with Atlanta. Atlanta United didn't go splashy signing out of the gate. They spent money, but it wasn't names that were immediately going to sell shirts. Like, I see a Miguel Almiron jersey here.
There you go.
He wasn't known before he was signed.
You know who traded them Almiron?
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Greatly. We greatly appreciate it.
In my defense, I did sign Ladero the week before that. So
you did okay.
It's okay.
You did pretty well for yourself with that one. But Atlanta didn't go splashy signing like New York has over the years, LA has, Chicago has.
Yep.
Now that you're here and you look at Atlanta and where it is, how do you feel about that balance between spending money on a player you think can impact the team, but isn't maybe that splashy signing, and spending money that's going to get players on billboards and sell jerseys?
For me, this is where Atlanta is the same as Seattle, and I mean that in the highest possible compliment. You can sign players here. You can go out here and you can sign the best player. That doesn't sound that complicated, right? But because of the fan support, because you guys are here listening to the CEO talk, a couple days before the game, spending your money, that allows us to go out and get the best player. We don't have to go get someone for marketing. We don't have to worry about whether or not some people are going to show up on the weekend. We can just build the best soccer team possible. And there's still in MLS, there are not very many teams where that's true, where the fan base is knowledgeable enough where they'll say, hey, that guy's pretty good. And we can create our heroes, right? We talked about Miggy. Certainly Joseph Martinez is in that as well. Neither one of those guys, to your point, were stars. If you look at the Seattle version of that, it's Ladero, it's Rui Diaz, João Paulo to some degree. So, look, it's the same model I've used. It's the same model that I expect to use here. And I think, look, Giacomakis as the first DP we signed, I think is emblematic of that, right? We didn't go out and try to replace Joseph Martinez circa 2018. We said, what is the best player that complements our biggest investments? So where are our biggest investments? Almada and Araujo, right? So now we got to do things to help them. What do they need? They need an outlet forward so they can relieve pressure and they can combine and get deeper into the box, right? We led the league in shots last year, but we also led the league in shots from outside the box. Guess what's not efficient? Shooting from outside the box. Guess what's more efficient? Shooting from inside the box. How do you do that? Have a target forward that can hold the ball and then lay it off, right, and knock it down and have these guys come in and score. So I think Giacomakis is a case in point where he's going to make Araujo and Almada better. If you look at Etienne, again, their big free agent signing, now you put that group of front four together, that cohesive whole, that's what we're going for. That's a unit, and if that group plays well, we're going to be all right this year.
What are these international negotiations like? Because I imagine you have probably multiple cell phones that they ring on different hours.
My wife does not allow multiple cell phones. Let's just be clear.
No burner phone over here. No.
All right. So then let me rephrase the question, counselor. You've got the one cell phone that has unlimited international minutes.
There you go. And data.
And you've got probably WhatsApp, several different
100%.
WhatsApp groups.
Yep.
What is this like? Because I know that fans can sit there and they're like, okay, we're bringing in player X from, say, South America. We're bringing in a player like a Giacomakis from Celtic. What are these conversations like to try to bring in these players dealing on an international scale?
Have you seen Scarface? I'm kidding. It's not that. It's
Not always, anyway.
It's a bad stereotype. No, you deal with people from different cultures. When I tell people, I've even had to explain this since I started this, because I was trying to explain like to the Falcons people, right? Because we all work together. We got a weekly call, and they're like, this Yakimaki's guy, like you said a week ago he was coming. I'm like, yeah, he's coming. I still think he's coming, but we're still working on some things. And I'm like, the rule of law does not mean the same thing in every country we deal with as it does in the United States. And again, that doesn't, to be clear, there's nothing nefarious about that. It's not illegal, nothing like that.
It's just how it is.
When you do negotiations and people come from different cultures, sometimes they're like, that thing where you keep your word, like, it doesn't really apply here. And so you get negotiations that instead of advancing in a Western linear corporate style, they go here and then they go there. And they're like, oh, yeah, my friend over here, he has something that he wanted. And then and so you wind up going in these circles. But to be clear, I was not involved, in these deals. I mean,
right.
This is Carlos, this is Demetrius,
right.
Jonathan, Scout, and Arjun's doing the analytics. So I got a team now that's doing this. And look, if I'm not, I won't exaggerate. It was one of the best perks of becoming the CEO is I don't have to do every one of these deals anymore. And it's not saying that I'm not involved, I'm not aware, I'm not helpful, I'm not able to advise, but those are the guys now that are working, ahead of a deadline for 24, 36 hours in a row without sleeping, talking to people like on the Yakimakis, right? You have a Japanese club, you have a Scottish club,
Red Diamond.
There we go, and Celtic in Europe, and you got to communicate with his family in Greece, so you can imagine what that schedule looks like in terms of field and phone calls to try to get the deal done.
So I think to clarify for people who have wondered, because it's been a question that's come up a lot since you came to Atlanta. You're setting the goals on the player side. You're setting like big picture objectives, not the minutia of this player or this player and this deal and do it this way.
100%. And then look, we're sitting down, and I'm a big believer in collaborative leadership. So
yeah,
we're also setting, all right, here's what we can spend, right? So because there's this idea, I think, that, hey, we got more money than everybody else does, which to some degree is true, again, because of the fan support, right? But it only counts if you spend it wisely. So,
yes.
And I think, what happened too is, they got so much right in the early going. I think they kind of lost track of, hey, we still got to be diligent about each one of these transactions. So we're trying to kind of go through with a fine tooth comb there. And again, try to make it a process so that we stay disciplined, because with the resources we have, if we apply them strategically, methodically, we will have more than everybody else. It'll be difficult to screw it up. As long as we have the fan support that we currently do. So, again, credit to all you guys. We should have a good team again pretty soon.
So then you're talking about the supporters groups in the 17s. How can the fan base and the supporters groups be a part of this process to help be that intangible to help Atlanta United get back to the top?
I mean, literally show up. When you show up, how many here sit in the supporters section? All right, that's a big turnout. I mean, and for those who don't, thank you for your support as well. But to the supporters, you guys make a huge difference. I mean, when any video that we show from a recruiting perspective starts with the supporters, and we say, and it'll show up on Apple now too, right? We're going to go, I said, I'm not sure the impact that Apple's going to have on MLS. I think it's probably going to be pretty good, but I know it's going to help Atlanta United, because there's going to be 50,000 people in the building, 70,000 on Saturday, and people are going to turn that on all over the world, maybe just out of curiosity, maybe because it's in front of the paywall the first week. Who knows? But I guarantee we're going to get a call that says, man, that looks pretty cool. I want to come play there. So, give yourselves a round of applause. You guys are the reason. You guys are the ones that are going to help us recruit some of the best players to build the best team.
What are the essential things for you from your experiences in Salt Lake and in Seattle and getting to know Atlanta in terms of creating that engagement with the fans and the back and forth and give and take?
Look, I like to think it's authentic. It came up in the interview process. It was very important to ownership. How are you going to relate to the fan base? And I said, well, my job did depend on the fan base for the last 8 years of my career. So I have some familiarity with this. I think as an example, I met with a group of the supporters leaders already. We're going to do that on a regular basis. That's the same process we followed in Seattle. Obviously, we want it to be authentic. We want it to be a two-way street. But I think that's what it is. It's being transparent. It's being authentic. It's listening and it's understanding what's important, and then hopefully working together to try to deliver it as best we can in terms of fielding the best team.
So when it comes to your expectations for the on-the-field product in 2023, what are they, and what excites you the most about this season that is coming up in a couple of days?
Home playoff game. So, and I will state for the record that I said that before they changed the playoff format.
I can vouch for that. I saw it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Look, in a 15-team Eastern Conference, can we finish in the top 9 with a budget on the high end of things? I think we should be able to do that, right? But the important thing is, the important goal is to certainly to aspire to more than that. But also, we got to play meaningful games in front of our fans. We have not played a home playoff game in 3 years. We haven't won a playoff game in 3 years. That should be the expectation of this crowd. In Seattle, we made the playoffs 14 years in a row. In my career, I made it 15 years in a row between Salt Lake and Seattle. So that is, I missed last year, to be clear. So got a blemish. But I have no intention of letting that happen again. So I expect us to be back in the playoffs. I expect us to be having hopefully more than one home game, ideally. And look, I get super pumped about that. The other tournament that I want to talk to you about is how many of you guys have heard of Leagues Cup?
Yep. Good show of hands.
I think that's going to be awesome.
I'm so pumped about Leagues Cup.
I mean, we're going to play Cruz Azul, a massive Mexican team at home. Gonzalo Pineda actually played for Cruz Azul back in his career. Gonzalo Pineda, the first time he and I were on a field was when I was GM for Real Salt Lake, and he played for Cruz Azul. They beat us 5-4 in Mexico City. Neither he nor I knew about the other one at that time, but we put it back together when we got together in Seattle. That was the time we'd actually met. But it is going to be such a cool tournament. This is the future of the league. You're talking about combining the two biggest forces again in this run-up to the World Cup. This is such a cool opportunity to not play a friendly, not to come out and have an exercise, but to play a meaningful game for a trophy, to get a Champions League place. That's a huge deal, and I'm so excited about that tournament in terms of, so you ask about meaningful games, it's playoffs, but it's also a good performance in the Leagues Cup.
So what's your match day going to look like on Saturday? Are you going to be making your way out to the tailgates? Any of that?
Look, well, I'm not going to tell you what Darren said about that.
I wasn't going to ask you what your shot of choice was. I wasn't going to go there.
I am probably not going to be out at the tailgates. I mean, if nothing else, a person my size in July wearing a suit, it's just not meant to be walking around outside.
Have to bring another.
Yeah, exactly. So, and no one wants to be around that. It's sweat, it oozes, it's gross. Yeah, trust me, I will do more good inside the building. I did my first game on Wednesday and got to talk to you and walked around, and I hit 20,000 steps. And I was like, I got to get in shape. So, I literally have started working out since, because a new job, right? You get out of your routine, and hadn't been getting in the gym after work, just trying to go 10, 12 hours a day, get up, do it again. People are like, how's your transitions going? I'm like, well, I eat and I sleep and I work. And that's my transition so far. But no, that stadium is massive.
Yes.
But I got to meet probably another 100 people at least. And, that's in the phase, and I get to make a good first impression, hopefully, with folks. And it's really fun for me to kind of get a feel for that building and feel for how people enjoy the games in different ways, and then hopefully chart the best course going forward.
So a couple more before we get you out of here. Yeah. I want to ask about the community and that aspect of it. I know it's something that the club has always taken very seriously. Seattle did an amazing job in the community as well. As you're getting to know the Atlanta community at large, how do you want to use the club to benefit the Metro Atlanta and the state of Georgia and the community?
So the phrase I've used is I want us to look like Atlanta. So what does that mean? So we have these things called regional development centers that are in places like Clarkston, like Dalton, Lawrenceville. I hope I'm getting these community names right.
You're good.
Sound
you're
right?
Good. Yeah.
And so that's our first kind of step, our first introduction. These are in some cases immigrant communities, refugee communities, underprivileged communities in some cases. And so to touch those communities and to, certainly not in those cases, not to introduce them to soccer, but to give them access to soccer, where if we can get some kids from each one of those communities to come back, join our academy, we are looking, for potentially for homestay families. So usually when you talk about homestay families, you're talking about fans or friends of the club hosting kids from all over the country. I think here, all we have to do is host kids from Georgia. Maybe we have to go to the Southeast. But, you look at the local boys that have come through here already. the George Bellows, the Caleb Wileys, on and on. There's several of them, right? We got high hopes for Noah Cobb, Jackson Conway, a bunch of the kids that played well on Wednesday, by the way.
Yeah.
Then that allows us then to be not just in the community, but authentically connected to it, right? One of the things that I believe fan base wants to see is they want to see hometown heroes playing from Atlanta United. And those hometown heroes have to be from all over, not just from, the Atlanta metro area within a 10-mile radius of Buckhead, right? We have to be everywhere. We got to be diverse. And I'm really excited about the opportunity because when you look at this fan base, again, just my first experience here was riding in an Uber from the airport. And I said to my Uber, I said, how many lanes is this highway? Because I knew Atlanta was bigger than Seattle, but I didn't have it was 14. So, I mean, in terms of 285, right, 7 on one side, 7 on the other.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, like this is, the biggest highway in Seattle's 5. So I'm like, okay, that's a fair proxy for, but I would say the talent is similar. That's why I'm talking to you about driving and traffic on I'm sure you're all excited about that. By the way, we did there'll be a poll released by the Sports Business Journal. We're going to do very well. Atlanta's going to do very well in that poll. You'll see it in a week or so. But the biggest negative was, shocker, traffic. Difficult to go to an event.
Kind of like going to the Mountain Pass near the Boeing plant where everything just kind of slows down and stops. You get that on 285.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. But all to say, that's the talent pool. We have a 14-lane talent pool here, and that's really, really exciting. And I think part of what we have to do, too, is spread the gospel, so to speak, in the sense of the starting lineup. The average salary starting lineup for Atlanta United is now approaching $700,000, thereabouts. What's the significance of that? That's now getting close to NFL territory. We're not in NBA territory necessarily, if you talk about MLB career, you can play that for 20 years, something like that, right? But an NFL career is 4 years. So now, and if in order to play in the NBA, you got to be probably 6'2", 6'3", or taller. So if you're planning on being a normal-sized human being when you grow up, you now have a real financial opportunity to play soccer and to stay home and play for Atlanta United. You don't have to go overseas so your family can't see you. So I really think that, and you guys all as an extension of us, when you talk to your friends, when you talk to your neighbors, talk about what an opportunity there is now to play soccer in this country. And again, it is going to just rocket forward between now and 2026. Then you guys are like the people that knew the band before, they became U2. Sorry to borrow the Seattle analogy. There's probably a better, Usher is probably a better Atlanta one.
You could go Outkast.
Outkast. There's the one. You knew Outkast when they were playing, in the clubs before they were playing in the stadium. So, Outkast jersey, is that I hear?
Oh yeah, folks are wanting a third jersey and they have Outkast design.
So I don't want to give too much away, and it's not exactly that. But there might be a third kit coming this year. We'll see. If we're gonna sell enough jerseys. But if there is, there might be something that you might be interested in.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
Breaking news, kind of, a little.
Developing story.
Get there. We got to sell our current jersey.
There's
So
that.
we had the best kit launch, by the way. Thank you all. We had the best kit launch in franchise history. So how many of you guys were there on Wednesday? All right.
Big
How
show of
many
hands.
of you guys get a new jersey? Anybody? All right. Awesome. Oh, look at that. All right. So this is the group. Thank you for supporting the club. That's a big deal. And that really, truly, that allows us to do more things that are culturally cool, right? Where we get to do more exotic secondary kits, third kits, things like that, because of the strength of the jersey sales, again, into the market, to the fan base.
Can't thank you enough for taking the time, first off, in such a busy week. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
So, last question before we go. Scott Flood's question. Scott Flood, the Flood Project.
Scott's got some man over here. Right?
Yes. So
Scott, do you want to read this question? I mean,
yeah. Go
Oh,
on.
no.
So we'll let Scott read it.
You're gonna let me answer?
I was trying to keep Scott out of
All right.
trouble, but all right.
We go way back, right? Oh,
Mere minutes.
You stupid man.
Yes.
I mean that with love. Yeah, I got him. All right, so listen, everybody, because this is what I'm gonna try to get him to do. This is my question. All right. Can we talk Garth for charity?
Okay.
To doing a keeper war with Guzan and Mercedes-Benz Field. you can get the dreadlocks and the braids and just bring it all back. And
I wish I had some bad haircuts when I was a pro soccer player.
The dreads were legendary.
That's one way of looking at it. I appreciate it. There wasn't such a thing as cultural appropriation back then, so I was not aware of that concept. Look, 100 pounds ago, I was a goalkeeper. When those 100 pounds come off, I'll play Brad Guzan in a goalie war. Until then, sadly, like I literally tore my Achilles right when I retired, so I've had the same injury. It's awful. You don't go do things like goalie wars after you've torn your Achilles if you are the father of small children, because you need to chase them around and pick them up and play with them and do things that are a lot more boring, but a lot more worthwhile than just the thrill of a goalie war. So I'm going to blow that one. I apologize, but I'll try to come through in other ways for you guys. There we go. Maybe that was a pop-up goal. There we go. Maybe I don't know if Brad has kids or not, but maybe our kids can play each other.
There we go.
We can feel like he's got a lot of kids. I got 3. He's got 4. All right.
3v3 kids again.
Yeah, 3v3.
3v3. There we go. So that's my boys would love it. If we want to propose that, they'll be in. The only thing is the 5-year-old might. Well, he's
going hard for a tackle.
He's not. He's a rough and tumble. He's the youngest of 3 boys. I'll never forget one of my first conversations I ever had with Ziggy Schmidt. I'm in Seattle. We're doing a college draft. This is the one where we got Roldan, so we wound up doing okay, coming to our senses. But my first ever scouting meeting, we sat in, and there's 1 or 2 kids, and Ziggy's like, "Oh, he's the youngest of 3 boys." Silence in the room. I'm like, "What? So what? Like, what does that mean?" At the time, I think I had 2 kids at the time. I should know that, and we definitely had 2 kids at the time. And he's like, "Oh, 3 boys." And I thought about it, and Ziggy himself had 3 boys, and he's like, "Oh no, they just beat the crap out of each other."
Mm-hmm.
And like that's so. If you draft somebody who is the youngest of 3 boys, you know he's tough. It's like fair enough. My life experience now confirms that. So,
have you ever carded one of your children in the house?
I wish that would serve as a meaningful barrier to behavior. We're the phase. We try timeouts, we try persuasion, we try distraction. The real solution to all this, though, is to play soccer. Go outside, play soccer. If they do that, they run around, then that's the only thing that really helps. So
we've kept you long enough.
Yes.
I think traffic should be decent on the way out of here.
We had to keep the Hall of Fame keeper for the New Orleans Riverboat Gamblers here.
Yes.
Just to make sure that traffic, it was a clean ride home.
I appreciate that very much. I think we've named all of the weird teams that I played for now. Nicely done to both of you gentlemen.
That's what we do. Thank
right.
you so much for the time.
Thanks, John.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Stacey. Thank you, guys.
Garth Lagerwey.